It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, what is going on?
A lot of news since we talked last. Tomlin Thursday, last Tomlin press conference of the season, and I felt like a lot of good updates, a lot of newsiness, and just I felt like a rather elaborative version of Mike Tomlin in today's press conference.
That's what I wanted to start there and ask you about. Before we get into the actual things that were said, just from that perspective, it just, I don't know what it was, but it felt just like a different type of Mike Tomlin press conference. And I've seen like some other, because I was looking for media perspective on this before even talking to you. I saw like Mark Caboli say the same thing. Jerry Dulac said it just felt like a different vibe to a Mike Tomlin press conference as opposed to how they typically go. What was your thought just in that?
My thought was he probably got yelled at. Like for what happened
for him to open up the way he did
the previous press conference when he just walked out. He started with I guess we'll call it an apology. He said he could have handled it better. I mean, it sure seemed like there was a message delivered there, as I expected there might be.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that's good perspective to add to. But you mentioned there's a lot to get into here, a lot of things. I want to talk about the thing that I was most excited about first and foremost, Alan, is offensive coordinator being addressed. Obviously, we knew that was going to come up, but we've talked about it. Like, we didn't feel like there was a candidate on the staff. Obviously, full credit to Mike Sullivan and Kenny Faulkner for what they were able to do after the team moved on from Matt Canada for the rest of the season. But like realistically, it's like a long-term plan at offensive coordinator. They didn't have somebody on the staff. But until I heard Mike Tomlin say the words that he did today about looking for an external candidate, that fear was going to be in my mind. So I'm glad that got addressed today with him saying they were going to look outside of the organization for an offensive coordinator. I can't wait till I see, like, I've already seen other teams obviously meeting with guys. I can't wait till I start seeing those tweets about the Steelers meeting with some offensive coordinator candidates.
Yeah, and not only external offensive coordinator candidates, external offensive coordinator candidates with experience, which is the one thing that I feel like I've said 1,000 times on this podcast that there was the big thing that was missing with Matt Canada is that you just did not have a feeling that he should be able to develop your quarterback. They need to get someone that has done it before, that you can say, look, if Kenny doesn't do it now, then it's Kenny. Like, that is absolutely an essential part of this arrangement. So I think, like, that's what I expected. But like you said, I guess it's good to hear it. There was something in the offensive coordinator, we'll just stay here. There was a question asked that, who's going to, who will be involved in the hiring process. And Tomlin said, it'll be me, Omar, and Art. And I don't know, I saw some people like take that as newsworthy or meaningful, like, that Tomlin doesn't have final say. Tomlin doesn't have final say on anything other than what he has for lunch. Like, they operate as a team, those three guys. Like, they're making decisions together all the time. I feel like there's this perception that Mike Tomlin is just doing his own thing all the time. This is not accurate. Art Rooney is very involved in the day-to-day operation of this team. Omar Khan is heavily involved. Like, their practice every day. Those guys every day, we sit there at the edge of the practice field and wait while Mike talks to Omar and Art after practice about what just happened. Like, it is a heavily involved group. He's not just going to go interview offensive coordinator candidates and not talk to those guys about it. Like, that's just not how they operate.
And how much of that, Alan, do you think, like, people perceiving that to be the case plays into the way that people feel about Mike Tomlin? And like the criticism that he gets.
People, I heard people say, like, oh, well, Tomlin hired Canada, so this is the group saying you don't get to do what you want this time. I was like, first of all, no, he didn't. Like, the same, Kevin Colbert, not Omar, but the same process led to Matt Canada being the offensive coordinator. The only person who ever has if you have ever said, like, oh, well, it was somebody's decision, they made it by themselves, the only person in the Steelers organization that's doing that is Art Rooney. No one else is just making decisions on their own without input, feedback from that guy, from other people on the team. It's just not how they work. And yeah, I think people have a strong misconceptions about the way Mike Tomlin and that team operates. I think a lot of it comes from people that are of an older generation just assuming that things are like the way they were when Chuck Noll ran the team and he pretty much did whatever he wanted whenever he wanted. That's not how Mike Tomlin has ever operated. I mean, it's just not. And I there's people out there that are like, oh, he'll never hire a good assistant coach because he has this ego and he has to be the smartest guy in the room. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He doesn't even want control that he doesn't have now that like a lot of other coaches do. I would venture to say that Mike Tomlin has a below average level of control over the entire organization compared to the average NFL head coach.
Okay. Yeah. Speculating here, and we're going to obviously see a list of names when they start to bring in guys for interviews, but is there somebody or a couple people that based off the way the map that they laid out there, what they're looking for in an offensive coordinator that kind of comes to mind for you?
I think the names that really jumped out to me as like, okay, based on what you just said, these fit: Pep Hamilton, Clint Kubiak, and Daryl Bevel. I think were the three names that just immediately, like without doing any research or really looking into it any more than that, just talking about guys with NFL experience from outside the organization. Maybe Byron Leftwich too. I guess you could put him in that group. But those were the ones that really jumped out to me.
Okay. And again, I don't want to go further than that. I just want to get some names because we don't know. We're just see the guys they bring in, and as they come in, we can talk more about them.
Well, we're going to talk about this when we talk about the quarterbacks too, but I'm going to start to dig into the OC candidates here this week and get us a big board together, and then do some more digging about maybe some combination fits that I think might work.
Was there anything more that you want? Because we can go to the quarterback stuff now if there's not anything else with the offensive coordinator stuff that you wanted to talk about.
No, I think that's good.
Okay. So the quarterback situation, obviously we knew this was going to come up as well. Mason Rudolph's a free agent. Kenny Pickett will obviously back in tow, even though Mitch Trubisky currently under contract, expect they'll get out from that deal and Mitch Trubisky will not be back in 2024.
Not mentioned at all today. So that should pretty much tell you everything you need to know about that. Right.
Yeah, he's not part of their plans going forward. But Kenny Pickett certainly seems like he is part of their plans going forward. They would like for Mason Rudolph to be back as part of their plans moving forward. But they talked about creating competition. Now, to go from creating competition to also having Mason back, is Mason really that competition that is being talked about there, those two competing for a QB1 in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, look, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, and I talked about it extensively with Chris Carter on the Locked On Steelers podcast today. I just think it's messy with Mason, and it doesn't need to be. I'm not sure that he's the best option in terms of who's out there to be a quarterback to push Kenny Pickett. In fact, I know he's not. I mean, there are better options, right? I mean, Kirk Cousins, we talk about on this podcast a lot. Better option, clearly. Even if you don't want to spend that much money, I think most people would agree that a guy like, Ryan Tannehill is a better option, right? A guy like, even a guy like Jacoby Brissett is probably no worse than an equal option in terms of ability and does not come with the messiness that comes with Mason having been here and been Pickett's backup for the last 2 years. And also might have some experience with an offensive coordinator. We've been talking about that here for a while. I saw some other people picking up on that today as well. There's a lot of reasons to me for it to not be Mason. And I don't see a lot of reasons for it to be Mason.
Yeah, I think that's like if Mason fits the bill for whatever reason, when you have the offensive coordinator in place, then fine, maybe he could be the vet that's back. But until I know who the offensive coordinator is, I'm not bringing back 2/3 of the quarterback room and only leaving that one spot to be like a mid-round draft pick or whatever, to rebuild the quarterback room with this offensive coordinator. And I basically tweeted that, and I got some responses about it, and people were saying that's not really how it works. You don't just build a quarterback room around who your offensive coordinator is. And I like, yes and no, I get it. But like, if there's a scenario in place, right, where you're talking about 2/3 of the quarterback room that are either a free agent or, aren't going to be back. And then Kenny Pickett, who has not proven himself to be the starting quarterback of this team yet, like that is the opportunity to do that, to reshape the quarterback room in the mold of whoever your offensive coordinator is and in his image.
Well, I think here's the really important thing for me, right? You're going to get a new offensive coordinator with a completely new system. You're going to be teaching an entire offense a completely new system, okay? Including Kenny Pickett. You're also probably going to have another quarterback, a young quarterback, a developmental piece, right? You're going to bring in. That other quarterback had either better be familiar with this system or just such a been there, done that pro who's been around forever and knows just about every offense enough to be able to pick it up on the fly, where you can feel like you can spend, that offensive coordinator can spend all their time in OTAs, in mini camp, in training camp, trying to get Kenny Pickett ready to make an impact so that and you can basically just ignore the second guy unless you need him, right? I mean, that's where I think you're at, like it's if you're teaching two guys the offense, you're going to teach both of them less well as if you only have to teach one of them. That's why the Indianapolis Colts went out and got Gardner Minshew, because he knew Shane Steichen's offense, so they could just teach Anthony Richardson and didn't have to worry about Gardner Minshew. And then when Gardner Minshew played, he was better than Richardson anyway. Guess what? They're still going back to Richardson when he's healthy, but like that was the whole thought process there from Indianapolis. We've seen this in some other places as well. I think it makes a lot of sense. So no, I kind of disagree with that notion. I do think the identity of the coordinator does matter about which backup or number two or whatever you want to call it, 1B guy to push Pickett that you want to bring in for that slot. And again, I think that's another one of those things where, yeah, okay, the situation is messy right now. The comments from Deontay Johnson, maybe there's a bit of a divide in the locker room. I actually don't believe that. I think if you asked Deontay Johnson to say very nice things about just about anybody in the universe, he would just do so and move on. He's not like a controversial person. I know he likes Mason. I know he's known him for a long time. It wouldn't surprise me if he preferred him, but I don't think there's any sort of like going to be bad feelings if it's not Mason there. Guys just want to win. And so, but there are going to be bad feelings in the fan base. There already are, right? I mean, I think you avoid a lot of messiness if it's not Mason Rudolph. And at the same time, I don't think he's the best of the options that are available for them, just in terms of overall upside. There are clearly better quarterbacks out there. So I just have a hard time seeing it being him. I know Mike Tomlin said actually the nicest things that he said about Mason Rudolph all year in the press conference today. I'm not sure I buy it. I think it makes too much sense for it to be someone else.
We've talked about the Sam Darnold thing, right? Like if they get Clint Kubiak from San Fran.
Right. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. If it's Bieniemy, Brissett. If it's Pep Hamilton, Tyrod Taylor, right? Like that's the kind of I like there are a lot of those fits that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. But what he did talk about with Kenny, right? Like was the confidence, like still belief in him. I don't know. Has your confidence wavered from year one to year two and going forward? Like, should this be in your mind, whether or not we knew that what the organization was going to do, they were going to give him a shot in 2024, but in your mind, should that be the way that this is?
Well, I mean, I think we're just so conditioned for coaches to say stuff that we know is not true. They're like, to say that you're more confident in Kenny Pickett right now than when you started doing business with him is just so blatantly, obviously wrong to anyone in the entire universe. I'm like, what are we? I get it. Like I guess, but like, no one is more confident in Kenny Pickett right now than they were in April of 2022. I doubt Kenny Pickett is more confident in Kenny Pickett right now than he was in April of 2022. And that doesn't mean that it's a lost cause. And that doesn't mean that he can't become a good NFL quarterback. But the idea that we're just, go get him, Ken. We believe in you. Like what? I don't know. That's a lot of nonsense to me. Like how could you be that confident right now?
So in your mind, should this be a room of Kenny Pickett, whoever this free agent would be that we're talking about, like a veteran free agent and then a mid-round draft pick, is that enough in your mind? Should that be the plan of attack at quarterback?
That's a good question. It can be enough. It's not definitely enough. You know, you want to make it definitely enough, go spend the $20 million and get Kirk Cousins. Okay. Like that'd definitely be enough.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do that because you want to sign a quarterback and draft a tackle and fix the rest of the team, then you do something that might be enough, right? You end up with Brissett or Tannehill or Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know. So someone in that tier, right? Trade for Geno Smith. I actually really like that idea.
Yeah, especially like if Shane Waldron OC,
hire Shane Waldron and trade for Geno Smith. Yeah, I could get on board with that. I just think I would be pretty confident in Geno Smith. Actually, I think that would be enough. I'm less sure about Shane Waldron. I really like Geno Smith. I just don't think, unless you're going to go get the money to get Mayfield, Cousins, one of these guys that's right at the top of the available free agent quarterbacks, then you're not assuring yourself that you've done enough at quarterback. You're leaving the chance that you didn't. And I think it is tough. And man, what a great answer to this question. I asked Mike Tomlin about a guy like Cam Hayward getting to the point where he's not sure if he wants to continue to play. How much does that weigh on you as a decision maker to be like, no, this has to be the year. Like, we can't just keep getting a little bit better. Like, there needs to be a jump. And he said, that is something I feel deeply. And he said that not getting Marquise Pouncey a ring is his greatest professional regret. And I got to think that happening to Cam Hayward would be right there. And so, man, that was a pretty powerful answer. And I think if you want to do the best by Cam Hayward, then you go get the sure thing and not the right answer.
I also really enjoy the fact that he just refers to winning the Super Bowl as confetti.
The confetti game.
Yeah. But in your mind, these bigger fish options that hearing him talk might not have seemed like they were on the table. Is that just them keeping their cards close to the vest? Is it possible that they do make a play like that? And it's just, obviously they wouldn't just come out and say it.
I think trading for Justin Fields doesn't feel very realistic, right? Because that's draft capital plus a guy who's not a sure thing anyway. I don't know. Maybe one of these top guys, the market turns out to be softer for than expected. I don't know. It just didn't seem like, man, when he was asked, do you think the 2024 quarterback is on the roster? And he just said, yes. Okay, if you're thinking about going to get Kirk Cousins, then the answer to that question can't be yes, right? It just can't. So I don't know. I feel like his words certainly lead me to cross a couple of those guys off towards the top of that list, even though I'm not sure that's the right call.
And even, this is even further away from that because, you could ask about the draft, but that's another question mark. Obviously, there's no sure things.
I don't get the sense that quarterback in the first round is a realistic option. I'm certainly day 2, day 3, starts to become a little clearer, but I unless somebody that nobody expects to falls, I have a hard time seeing them use their first round pick on a quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything more about quarterback stuff?
No, I think that pretty well covered the list.
Okay. I wanted to bring up Tomlin because obviously he started with the whole contract thing and then had to field some questions about the contract. More comfortable answering contract questions in this setting, according to himself. But it sounds like an extension is coming, which we fully expected. Could it be obviously we don't know how soon that's going to happen. There's times where it goes into training camp and he could sign one there or whatever, but this is fully what you expected to happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was no chance that he was coming back and not getting a contract extension. I don't think that it means that they're necessarily tied to him for the length of it. It's just a necessary part of doing business. You can't have a head coach who's on an expiring contract and be trying to sign an offensive coordinator, be trying to sign free agents. It's the way business is done. That doesn't mean that there's real stability there, but at least looks like there's real stability there. And it lets people be willing to sign on that line. You heard from guys like TJ Watt about how much they care about playing for Mike Tomlin. Certainly that is an asset when the team goes into free agency. So, I mean, there was no, in my mind, there was no way that he wasn't coming back and signing an extension unless he didn't want to. And it certainly seems like he does. So, my guess is that gets taken care of. The timing of it, I don't know, but they'll be able to at least tell people, it's getting done. Don't worry about it. It always gets done. It'll happen.
The offensive coordinator thing specifically, somebody asked about, like, is it going to be harder, or would it be harder to bring in an offensive coordinator if you didn't have an extension in place?
Yeah, it would be nearly impossible. I mean, I don't want to say actually impossible, because there are always guys, but like, you're not going to get the best candidates if you're talking about a head coach on a 1-year deal.
And what is the reason for that? Because I'll let you answer that, and then I'll bring up one other thing that I thought about.
Well, look at what happened with Eric Bieniemy in Washington now, right? Like, okay, so he was the guy, like the most sought after offensive coordinator, and he wants to be a head coach. Okay, so his head coach gets fired. Okay, he's still under contract. Now he's got to wait the entire time while Washington hires a new head coach. Then that new head coach is going to probably interview other candidates to see if he wants to keep Bieniemy or not. And then by the time if the new Washington coach decides 4 weeks from now that he doesn't want Eric Bieniemy as his offensive coordinator, all the jobs are going to be filled. Like, you never want to be stuck as a coordinator with a contract that's longer than your head coach. Like, that's not the way you want it. You want to be there with the guy. Hey, if you got to fire us all. Like, you don't want to be in that situation. And so I think I think that guys would avoid that. And look, to tell Mike Tomlin you're going to coach out the last year of his contract is a very, very, very strong sign that you are not re-signing him afterwards. Like, so what would be the point of me wanting to be an offensive coordinator to sign a 3-year contract with that team? Like, I wouldn't, because what's going to happen after year one? Like, it's pretty obvious at that point that they intend to move on if they don't sign him to an extension.
Yeah, well, especially in that Washington case with Bieniemy, like, I don't know, they're making it seem like all signs point to Ben Johnson being the guy there after they got the GM bringing him from San Fran, which, yeah, he's taking that offense. It's his offense. So Bieniemy wouldn't be part of his plans.
Right, exactly. So now he's going to be look, maybe this will work out for the Steelers. Maybe Eric Bieniemy gets available way late in the process, and they're just like, yoink, thank you. But I don't think that most offensive coordinators are going to want to sign up for that.
So the only thing that I was going to bring up, like I said, I wanted to get your answer, and then I thought of one thing, would be, what if you brought in this coordinator with, and this is like, would an organization ever take this leap with the assumption that they would take over as the head coach when the head coach has moved on, for like an expiring contract for Tomlin, obviously the 1 year, and then the coordinator takes over?
I think succession plans can work, but I think it would have to be a unique relationship between the head coach and that person. Like, would that work for? I'm like, I can't. Like, okay, if Byron Leftwich was like a lot closer to being a realistic head coach candidate, like something like that, right? Okay, like where, Mike, you really like this guy. He's qualified to be an offensive coordinator. We think he can be a head coach. Hire him here. Let him take a shot. Yeah, there you go. I could see it. It just is about that relationship, because Tomlin's going to have to go along with it for it to work. And I just don't know how many guys that are out there that would be legitimate head coach candidates in 1 year are on the Steelers offensive coordinator radar. Like, I'm trying to rack my brain to think of someone.
No, you know what I actually thought about would be if they were looking for a defensive coordinator, although he's a defensive coordinator, so would he make that lateral move? Would be B-Flow coming back?
Yeah, or like someone like Raheem Morris, he has worked with Tomlin in the past, something like that. Yeah, but those guys are both
an offense
coordinators, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Anything else from the Tomlin contract perspective side of things?
No, I mean that was pretty standard. He was very forceful and said that he never told anyone that he was thinking of stepping away, and that all that reporting was nonsense. So take him at his word. He seemed angry about it. I believe him. I think it certainly leads us to question how much faith we should put into Jay Glazer's reporting about Mike Tomlin going forward, because it sure seems like we all got kind of led astray there, right?
Is this what Tomlin wanted the entire time?
No.
No. There was a lot that was said today by Mike Tomlin. It might actually take us more than just this episode to cover it, but we got some time still left on this episode. Is there anything else specifically that you wanted to touch on today?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot there. I don't know. Why don't you just pick a spot and we'll kind of go around the team and let me know what you came up with.
Okay. I always think it's really interesting when like players are highlighted individually. And there was a couple instances of that, especially when he closed out talking about the punter situation with Pressley Harvin. And that was one of the things that we talked about yesterday. So I figured we could circle back on it. I don't think that he should be very secure in his position going into 2024, Pressley Harvin.
No, that was about as critical of a player as you're going to hear a coach be in that.
Him and DeMarvin Leal, I felt like pretty critical of.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. Those are the last two questions, and I really felt like I needed to ask about Leal because I talked to Marv in the locker room on, I guess that was Tuesday, and I got a story coming up, and I wanted to get Tomlin's thoughts there, but sure seems like that was a waste of a draft pick, and things aren't working out. And maybe you could say that for both of them. I don't know. I do think the Steelers are a little higher on Harvin than the world is in general, but given that comment, you got to think somebody is coming in as significant competition.
Mm-hmm. Some of the other players that he highlighted individually was asked obviously about, Najee Harris's 5th-year option, pretty non-committal on that. Although, he was complimentary of Najee's play himself, acknowledged, 3 years, 1,000-yard rusher. Any insight on that and the way that could go, which direction?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that Mike Tomlin would give him that 5th-year extension right now. I'm a lot less sure about what Omar Khan thinks about that. And he's the guy with the purse strings, so we'll see.
What makes you say that about Omar?
Just his knowledge of positional value, the way other teams do business. Just giving Najee that 5th-year extension is a very old Steelers way to do business, and this definitely feels like an area where Omar's going to say, hang on a second, we're going to give how much money to a running back that's all guaranteed? Is there something else we can do? And so I don't know. I can see that. I can see that playing out differently than maybe Mike even envisions right now.
Gotcha. Okay. Pat Freiermuth, Mike Tomlin highlighted as somebody that he thought he stepped up in like a leadership perspective. Did you feel that way as the year went on?
It's interesting because Pat's not like a super serious guy. I think if you've seen like what he does on video, and you can kind of pick up on that. Okay. And I think it's hard, right, when you're not like naturally a super serious person to find a voice when you want to be taken seriously. I've kind of had to deal with this myself in that, like, my social media is a lot of me like trolling the fans and being a jerk and a wise guy and making memes. And then all of a sudden I've got a report on like, oh, somebody got arrested or something bad happened. And you've got to be able to find a voice when you need to be an adult. And that doesn't mean that you can't have fun. It's sports. It's supposed to be fun. And I really feel like Pat found that voice this year as a guy that can be loosey-goosey and can be a good time and somebody that everybody likes being around, but also like find the words and the voice to say important things when they need to be said and to be heard. I really think that he did come a long way in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the lack of leadership on the offensive side of the football, and it'd be nice if you have a guy like that be able to step into that role. Now, obviously, like, contract has to play into that too. Is he going to be around long enough to be able to take on that type of role? But
man, I wrote about this I think Tuesday night. I don't have any idea what day of the week it is. I've lost my North Star. They didn't play any Sunday games. Now I don't have any games. I don't know. It's going to be a really tough evaluation for them because you look at his numbers and it's like, but he was hurt and the offense stunk around him and they hardly used him. Like, how much is Pat Freiermuth worth? I think is a very difficult question as he enters the last year of his contract and they get to that negotiation phase. I'm not envious of Omar and Pat's agent here because I think this is tricky. I'm not saying there's going to be problems. I just think it's a difficult evaluation to make. Yeah,
I 100% agree. And then George Pickens, I wanted to bring up as well, said there's a lot of meat left on the bone, but he appreciated the way that he came along. Obviously, a lot of things happened this year off the field for George that were part of this conversation and why this question was asked.
Yeah, I mean, sort of a backhanded compliment, right? Like, yeah, he got better, but there's a
lot of meat left on the bone. Yeah, there's still a long way to go.
I think they very much see George as a work in progress and someone who needs continual development.
I think that's a good way to put it. It's always going to be a work in progress, I feel like, though.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a how about this? It's a work that needs progress. How about that? Everybody's always working on it, but there's some areas of attention that remain there. I think is the main takeaway there.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, well, good stuff. We can revisit tomorrow again. There was enough.
We still have names to play back or not back. Although now I think we can. Maybe we just need to reset the whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. But
I don't know that I changed my mind. Did you change any of your back or not backs based on Tomlin today?
Well, I think we could add DeMarvin Leal to the list.
Yeah, I agree.
The one that I'm still on the fence about. I was a no yesterday. Still might be a no, but maybe more in like the 51 to 49 no is Mason.
Okay.
But yeah, I think everything else I'd definitely stay the same with.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think I really changed any of my opinions. And keep the comments coming and let us know what you guys think.
Absolutely. Alan, tell the people where they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on Twitter, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's Mike Tomlin's apology and joke at the start of his press availability up there. One video up on the YouTube channel here. Check that out. And got all kinds of stuff planned for the offseason here at Steelers Now.
Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit us in the comments. And yeah, absolutely subscribe. We're 7 subscribers away from 11,000. So
I like that. To do that. That's a good way to end the season here. 11,000.
Yeah, there we go. Give us a 5-star review as well if you're listening somewhere else, whether that's Apple, Spotify, wherever it might be. We're not just on YouTube. I'm Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.